Coming up on this episode of Hit the Sled, the Redskins slash Commanders get their man. Next on Hit the Sled. Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Eve coming to y'all with another episode of Hit the Sled. Hey, before we get started, hey, you can watch me on my YouTube channel, Hit the Sled. But not only that, you can follow me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok. And also, before we get started, the little subscribe button. That's on the bottom of when you go into the YouTube channel, hit that, hit the like button so that the algorithm can pick it up so that we can get this thing up and going. That being said, man, what an exciting episode for Hit the Sled today. We get out the Washington Redskins slash Commanders, get their man, Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn is a lukewarm. Initially, it was a lukewarm hire for me. Thinking about it, looking at it, you know what I said? I thought to myself and I said, you know what? This might be a smart hire. Dan Quinn has been a defensive coordinator for the last 3 seasons with the Cowboys. Previously to that, he was a head coach with the Atlanta Falcons. Previous to that, he was also a defensive coordinator with the Seattle Seahawks. And we're going to get into all that. I'm someone that is thinking about this in a way that says to myself, I have to trust what Josh Harris and Adam Peters are trying to do. Sitting back, thinking about it, looking at Dan Quinn, I said, let me sit back and let me look at his record. Let me actually go back and look at what he's done, what he's accomplished, what type of head coach he was previously with the Falcons. And not only that, his time with the Cowboys after he was fired from the Atlanta Falcons. And after going back and looking at it, he did a good job, to be quite honest with you. He did a really good job with the Cowboys as defensive coordinator. When you look at it, the past 3 seasons, his defense with the Cowboys was really, really good. They were really, really good. They led the NFL in takeaways. They led the NFL in sacks. And also they led the NFL in defensive touchdowns. The last 3 seasons with the Cowboys. And also, he had 2 different players lead the league in interceptions. First one was Trayvon Diggs, and the other one is Deron Bland. And Deron Bland actually set an NFL record this past season for, I believe it was about 5 or 6 return touchdowns. So defensively, he's done a really good job defensively, man. He really did. Michael Parsons, since he's been in the league, Dan Quinn has been his defensive coordinator. And to be honest with you, he's done a good job in utilizing utilizing Michael Parsons. A lot of times I think fans only remember his last game against the Packers, which it wasn't a good game defensively. They did give up a lot against the Packers, but you can't forget about his total time there, man. He did do a really good job with the Cowboys. If we're going to be honest to him and we're going to be fair, a lot of times with coaches like Dan Quinn, he's very good with schemes, forcing turnovers, pass rush, and the way the NFL is now, teams are really passing teams. So his defenses tend to be built to stop the pass, not stop the run. Now, a lot of their defensive efficiencies kind of went sideways. They kind of struggled against the run when Leighton Vander Esch, the linebacker, got hurt. Once he got hurt, they kind of really started tail spinning and stopping the run. So you gotta really give that with a grain of salt. Why there wasn't other linebackers, that's a personnel issue. I don't really know much about as far as the Cowboys' issues in regard to what linebackers they had, what didn't they had. But what I do know is that from the outside looking in, they were exceptional at getting turnovers. They were great at getting sacked, putting pressure on the quarterback. And also, whenever they had their hands on the ball, they scored touchdowns. And in this NFL, where most teams are passing teams, and to have two different guys leading NFL in interceptions, that's really good. He has to get credit for that. You got to give him credit for that. And to have not just one guy, two different guys, because this past season, Trayvon Diggs tears his ACL, and Deron Bland comes in and does an exceptional job this year in getting interceptions and returning back for touchdowns. So if we can go back a little bit, Dan Quinn's history. He was the DC. He was the defensive coordinator of the Seahawks back in the height of the Legion of Boom in 2013, 2014. He used that platform. He used that position in coordinating that Super Bowl team and the team that lost to the Patriots in the Super Bowl. They should have won. We all know they should have won back-to-back Super Bowls. They should have won. They should have won the Super Bowls. But that being said, he gets hired by the Atlanta Falcons. And one thing about me, I'm someone, and I preach this to a lot of my friends, a lot of my boys and stuff like that, people that I talk to, is that leadership is not only about what you do, how you communicate with people, it's also the people that you hire around you. And one of the things that I learned about Dan Quinn was that he was able to identify talent. I am big on people in leadership positions being able to identify talent. You have to be able to see it. And if you go back to his track record, when he was with Atlanta Falcons, he assembled a very good staff. One of his first hires was Kyle Shanahan. People forget, Kyle Shanahan, if we can go back, Kyle Shanahan had a successful run with the Houston Texans. Matt Schaub, Darren Foster, Andre Johnson and them boys, all those years. He leaves Houston, he come to DC. He comes to Washington. The initial first year, he got John Beck and all that craziness. They draft RG3. Robert comes in, does an exceptional job. Unfortunately, he gets hurt. Kurt comes in, replaces him till he gets healthy, comes back. They win the division, goes in the playoff. Robert blows his knee. And we all know the history that went on regarding that. Regarding that. Fast forward. Kyle gets fired. Him and his father gets fired from the Redskins. Kyle takes a job with Cleveland. He goes to Cleveland, dysfunction everywhere. Johnny Manziel gets drafted, and Kyle ends up getting fired from there. Dan Quinn gets the job in Atlanta. He gets the job in Atlanta, and one of his first hires was Kyle Shanahan. Kyle Shanahan had two poor successful runs in Washington and in Cleveland. But Dan Quinn identified that Kyle Shanahan could be a great coach. He hires him. And he also hires Raheem Morris. He makes Raheem Morris his assistant head coach. At that point, Raheem Morris was a former head coach with the Bucks. Everyone knows now he was too young for that position. At that time, I believe he was only 32 at that time. And then he's been in Washington, and it was a mess. But he identifies that Raheem is a hell of a coach, and now he goes and be a defensive coordinator with the Rams all those years, win the Super Bowl. And now he's a head coach. And Dan Quinn identified Raheem Morris early on in his tenure. He hires Dan Quinn, makes him his assistant head coach. He also is able to hire Matt LaFleur. Yes, the same Matt LaFleur that's the Green Bay Packers head coach. Dan Quinn hired him. Also, somebody else that's a current head coach in the AFC East, Mike McDaniel, the Dolphins head coach. Now, some people will say that those are Cal hires. Those are Cowboys. Kyle Shanahan said, if you gonna hire me, I gotta bring my boys with me. Yeah, that might be true. But also, he had to understand, he had to trust Kyle to say, I trust you, I believe in you, and if you feel like these guys are your guys and they can do the good job, so be it. Bring them on. A lot of new head coaches wouldn't do that. A lot of head coaches that's all power hungry. This is I'm running everything, control freaks. They wouldn't do that. They will have to fill out all the positions themselves. They told Cal, you the offensive coordinator, and this is the staff that you're going to work with. But Dan Quinn didn't do that. He allowed Cal to bring those people on. Mike McDaniel, Matt LaFleur, and those guys ended up developing into who they are now today. So the point I'm trying to say is he knows how to identify talent. He can see it. And one thing about Hit the Sled, one of the things I'm gonna stress a lot about is the mere fact that you have to be able to see talent as a leader. You got to be able to identify coaches. What makes Kyle Shanahan so great now as a coach, along with Sean McVay, is that these guys can identify future great coaches. Every single year since Sean McVay has been a head coach, people have been hired off his staff to be also head coaches. Raheem Morris recently, head coach in Minnesota. The head coach in Cincinnati. These are all people every single year have had opportunities to be head coaches. Kyle Shanahan, people are getting rated from their front office all the time. Make no mistake about it, John Lynch has the title of president of football operations. Kyle Shanahan running that ship. Kyle Shanahan is running that ship. Kyle Shanahan is the one making football decisions in that organization. Every single year, it seems like Kyle Shanahan is losing coaches. Every single year, Kyle Shanahan is losing people in the front office. It's because one of his greatest abilities not only is calling plays, designing plays, coming up with schemes to beat the opposition teams, is that he's able to identify talent. Kyle Shanahan can see it. And what that does is superior talent always wants to work for Kyle Shanahan. Every single time, superior talent wants to work for Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay. They have no problems filling out their coaching staff because the all up-and-coming coaches want to work for Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay. And you know who had Sean McVay? Who identified Sean McVay? The Shanahans, Kyle and Mike Shanahan. So the point I'm trying to make is that Dan Quinn saw that in Kyle, and he hired him. He didn't have to. He did. And if you go back to those times in Atlanta, they were rolling for about 3 years. They were rolling for about 3 years. The fourth year, the fifth year, they started going 0-5. Dan Quinn gets fired. Raheem Morris takes over, and he finishes out the season. But if you go back to that, when Kyle left and goes to the 49ers, it coincided with Matt Ryan starting to slow down. Matt Ryan was never the same after that. And also, Julio Jones was starting to slow down as well. So what I'm trying to say is that Adam Peters and Josh Harris identified some of the strengths of Dan Quinn, who they feel like if you read anything, everybody always say that Dan Quinn is a great communicator, a great leader, has all the qualities that you need to lead a football team. And that's what Adam Peters and Josh Harris said during the press conference. Let me read to you what Adam Peters said during his press conference. One of the things they asked, the question was, what are some of the things they look for in the head coach? And what Adam Peters said, what Adam Peters stated was leadership, great communication, Being able to be honest, direct, and upfront. A coach has to have all those qualities, and they all are intertwined. But those are the main qualities that you need to have. You have to be very smart. You have to be driven. There are so many different qualities that make a great head coach and a great leader, but really it's just about being a great person, a great human being that people will follow. If you read everybody around the league, that's what they say about Dan Quinn. And if you go back to the Cowboys, from the outside looking in, from everything I see, I'm not a Cowboy fan. Never said I was, never said I. But everything I see, they say Michael Parsons speaks highly of him. Trayvon Diggs speaks highly of him. All the young people, young guys in the league, they speak highly of him. And that should tell you something right there. He's able to communicate. He can be honest and direct. So I think this is somebody that Adam Peters and Josh Hurst, they feel like it fits the bill. He's who they were looking for. And not only that, one of the things that struck me was that after he was fired by the Atlanta Falcons, they stated that he took a year off. He took a year off and he went to Hawaii for a year. He went to Hawaii for a year to self-reflect as to what happened to him in Atlanta. To me, that's a great sign. Most people that are in leadership positions, one of their greatest strengths is to be able to self-reflect. It's to be able to look at yourself and self-analyze yourself, be self-critical. Most people are not able to do that because you have to have the emotional intelligence to understand that I have to be able to look what is going on with me. What is wrong with me? What am I doing wrong? A lot of people can't look at themselves and say that to themselves. And any leader has to be able to do that. If you don't have that emotional intelligence to be able to look at yourself and self-analyze, be self-critical, it's hard for you to succeed. Because you will always pass the blame on to somebody else instead of looking at what you did wrong. Because one thing I know is that whenever everything that happens to you, it keeps happening to you everywhere you go. You over there, you're working there, something always happening. You leave that job, you go over there, you're getting fired. You go over there, people don't like you. Why is that? Why is it always happening to you? Everybody can't be wrong. But a lot of people in life cannot self-reflect. That's emotional intelligence. You have to be able to do that. So when I read that he took a year off, went to Hawaii to do some self-reflection as to what happened in Atlanta, not only that, how can he become a better coach? That showed me a lot, that he has a lot of self-reflection in his life. He's able to understand, identify where he went wrong, fix what went wrong, and then go move forward. And to me, that's something right there. That's something I can identify with. My success, I'm speaking for me now personally, and that's some of the things that I would do on Hit the Sled. Is not only give y'all the football perspective, but also give y'all some of the things that I've learned, and for me to be able to sit where I'm sitting at in front of you, have this ability to be able to do what I'm doing now. Is that my successes are direct results of my failures in life. I had to self-reflect. I had to look at what I was doing wrong. How can I be a better man? physically and mentally. And how can I learn from my mistakes? Because there's no such thing as failure, only learning experiences. And for somebody like Dan Quinn, for him to be able to do that, a guy like that, he's a former head coach, successful, went to a Super Bowl, lost that Super Bowl. What did you learn from that? Is he able to learn from his prior mistakes? You have to be able to learn from your prior mistakes so that you won't have to sit back in that classroom again. If you do not learn from your prior mistakes, you're going to make the same mistakes again. Meaning that if you don't learn from the lessons that were given to you, if you don't learn from the lessons that will happen to you, guess what's going to happen? You're going to be sitting. You're going to be going through those same lessons again. You're going to be back in those same situations. So you have to be able to learn from your prior mistakes, and that's something that I identified with. And when I read that, I said to myself, I said, this is a guy right here that might be a better coach now than what he even was when he was with Atlanta. And in Atlanta, he made it to a Super Bowl. Was up 28-3. What was the mistakes he learned from that game? Not running the ball, not telling Kyle to run the ball. Run plays that's going to bleed the clock. What did he learn? If I was in that press conference, that's one of the things I would ask. We'll ask Dan Quinn in this introductory press conference and say, hey, Dan, we understand that after you were fired from the Falcons, you went back and reflected. You took a year off to reflect as to what happened to you during your time as a head coach. What did you learn from that time of reflection, and how did that self-reflection make you a better coach where now you're the head coach of the Washington Commanders? That's what I would ask Dan Quinn. If Hit the Sled was in that press conference, that would be a question I would ask Dan Quinn, because I'm interested in finding out exactly what did he do. Because obviously it worked. He came back. He was a very good defensive coordinator with the Cowboys. Very good, to be honest with you. Yes, last game against the Packers was poor game plan, but that happens. You don't want it to happen in the playoffs, but unfortunately it did. And unfortunately, that day, Dak Prescott and the offense wasn't able to bail him out. That's team football. That's football. But also, what did he learn to put himself in position now to be a head coach? So as I look at it, I'm looking intently. I'm looking really with a keen eye as to what has he learned. Whatever he's learned, how is he applying it now to his future chance to be another opportunity he gets to be a head coach? And for me, I'm hoping that he's successful, because it is my team, Redskins / Commanders. But I will be looking at it very closely to see what are some of the changes, looking at it and reading to find out what are some of the changes he's made from his time in Atlanta to where he is now. Not just schematically, even from the time he was with the Cowboys. What lessons did he learn there to what he's going to bring now to a head coach, but mentally, physically, how is he going to be a better leader, a better communicator, be able to analyze and assess talent a lot better from the player's perspective and the coach's perspective? How did he get better? That's what I would be interested in seeing in the next couple of years. So I'm excited about the hire. It's the first real significant hire by Josh Harris and Adam Peters. And now this ship is Josh Harris' ship now. From this point on, we have to analyze and look at Josh Harris with a critical eye whenever we need to be critical, we have to be critical. But whenever he needs to be praised, Hit the Sled will do that. Hit the Sled will praise Josh Harris. And I believe with the hire that he's made with GM, the head coach hire that he made, I believe this is a very good start. A very good start. And I just believe that we are miles apart. And before I go, one of the last things I would say, we as Redskins / Commanders fans have to get out of the notion, Dan Snyder, we've been pre-programmed that whenever something doesn't make the highlight reel, whenever something doesn't is all over ESPN, people ain't praising it, it ain't the media all over, that it's bad, it's terrible. If the guy doesn't get hired, if something doesn't look right initially, it's wrong, everything, we got to get out of that. Snyder gone. See, Snyder has pre-programmed all Commanders, all Redskins / Commanders fans that everything goes bad, everything is toxic, they getting ran over, they getting ran through. Ben Johnson didn't want to be a head coach. And as I read through things now, Ben Johnson, after they first interviewed, the Commanders didn't feel like his hot wasn't in it. That's why they really want to speak to him again. So before we all jump down because they were the last hire, it's a retread and all this. Yes, Dan Quinn has had a head coaching job previously. Yes. But does that mean he shouldn't get a head coaching job again? So we need to get out of that. So with that being said, we're gonna be looking at Dan Quinn. I can't wait for the introductory press conference. We're gonna talk about that on Hit the Sled when that happens. And once it does, we're gonna talk about it. We're gonna go over it. And it's gonna be interesting to hear what he has to say. But with that being said, I appreciate y'all checking me out on Hit the Sled. Hey, man, follow me on my YouTube channel, Hit the Sled. But not only that, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. We're going to get all those things up and going. Now that the off season is here, we're going to get it going. We're going to get that stuff ramped up. But, man, I truly appreciate y'all watching. Hit the like button. Leave the comments. Put something in there. Leave the comments. Hit the like button so that we can get this thing up and going even more. I truly appreciate y'all. Hit the sled. We coming, y'all. Appreciate it.